You're listening to 94.5 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show of your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you all the news from the local area and around the world. We are very fortunate in this show to have some of the world's best athletes, sports people, footballers, people that work in sport, from trainers, coaches, psychologists, you name it, we've got them on the show. We've also got a segment that's not so new now. We interview some of the leading figures in the world of psychology and related fields, and they speak about their research and other things related to mental health and psychology. And today we have a very special guest. We're going to sort of focus on the world of sports presenting. The goal of the show is to increase awareness, participation of sports, and get an insight into what people do in different roles in sport. And today we're very fortunate to have a very special guest that's going to give an insight into what's involved in sports presenting, which I suppose a lot of people listening in are probably interested to know for themselves. Really, the people who may want to get into presenting will maybe get an insight into some of the challenges involved in that arena. So, Eisha Acton, sports presenter, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to speak to you today.
You too, Eisha. So, let's sort of start from the beginning, Eisha, for our listeners. What sort of motivated you to go into presenting? What was your motivation to go into the world of sports presenting?
Well, I guess I've always followed sport, particularly football, and I have been working as a model from a young age. I went to theatre school from a really young age, so I feel like I was really comfortable in front of a camera. So it kind of made sense that, seeing as I do have a passion for football and sports, it just kind of, it made sense that I focused on trying to get presenting jobs, and more particularly sports presenting jobs. So that's kind of what I set my goal to be.
Yeah, and so what's the journey been like for you to sort of, obviously you're very passionate about sport, you love your football. What's it been like? How would you describe working in the field of sports presenting, just for our listeners to get a bit of an insight into what it's like being a presenter?
I guess, I mean, it's easy to say that I am a sports presenter, and predominantly that is what I do, but there are so many different things you can do in the field, I guess, of sports broadcast or content creation. So I guess the main thing is that it's never really going to be the same. Unlikely you're going to be sitting in the studio reading off a teleprompter. You know, you need to be equipped with skills for live shows, for interviews that go wrong, or to go out in the field. You know, sport anyways is so unpredictable. You just really need to get comfortable thinking on your feet. You really need to get comfortable being able to articulate yourself, because you know, even if someone's been watching sport for years, to actually, you know, in a split second be told, right, round up what's just happened in 10 seconds, go.
Wow.
And there's a big camera and there's crazy people behind you screaming and shouting. Being able to just compose yourself. So there are just so many qualities, I guess. If you work on those qualities, you'll just get better and better at working in sports broadcast, but it's very, very vast, and it's very difficult just to focus on one certain area and know that you'll nail it. The main thing is obviously experience, and yeah, you definitely need to be comfortable with it. Whether that's, you know, making sure that you've made your own videos at home, you're creating your own content in the lead up, but being comfortable in front of a camera really is so important. I mean, even when I interview some people, I think, oh god, this would have gone so much better if they just ignored the camera, you know. And it isn't as easy as just telling someone to do that. And even an aspiring presenter will never feel at ease immediately, but if you do your own things to sort of, you know, get more comfortable with the camera being there and sort of mentally processing, like, right, I'm speaking to a friend, or I'm speaking to a room full of people, or, you know, don't freak yourself out too much about this broadcast live, oh my god, and, you know, everyone's watching me as well, you know. So there's a lot to just put to the side and make sure that you focus on getting the job done and staying composed.
That's really interesting you say, and I suppose in one sense, you know, we sort of watch presenters and we sort of see the interviews, and it seems from what you say, Eisha, there's a lot of work involved. It's a lot of work to do, a lot of practice involved. Would that be correct? That obviously, you know, you need to work hard and to sort of, you know, be the best you can be to make sure that the the content sort of comes out there and has an impact?
Definitely. I'd say 50% is preparation and research and trying to prepare as much as you can for any sort of outcome. Even if it's live, you can sort of, predict, like, right, if this happens, this is what I need to focus on. If this happens, the talking point should be this, and just try and plan around that, even though it's very difficult with live stuff. You'll know on live radio, even, you might suddenly get breaking news, and what do you talk about it? How do you propose it? How do you, deliver that information? So, I agree that there's only so much you can prepare, but I'd say if someone was to ask me, what does this job entail, I would definitely say 50% of it is preparing, and 50% of it is my skills that I've gained over experience. And I guess the more experience you get, the more balanced out it will be. But initially, prepare for any circumstance.
That's really interesting you say. And I mean, you mentioned there, obviously, you sort of worked in modelling and sort of the challenge in presenting for some people, being in front of the camera. Do you feel that, being a model and having that experience perhaps gave you some sort of experience to sort of be okay with being sort of the focus of attention on a camera, where sort of some people who go straight into presenting, obviously everyone's different, but from your perspective, do you think it might have helped you to sort of be comfortable to be, have the camera on you, or?
It definitely did. Sorry. Yeah, it definitely did, because it isn't as easy as just pretending it's not there. You need to engage with the camera, you need to acknowledge it, you need to emote properly with a camera, and it's a really bizarre concept just because it's a big lens in front of you, there's a cameraman right behind it, and there's a lot going on. But even with modelling, whether it's TV commercials or whether it's just standing there with a camera in front of me and not caring about anyone watching, it sounds so simple, but even, like if you were to go to the town centre now and get someone to take pictures of you in the town centre, it's so cringy. You think everyone's looking at you, you feel really conscious. But I've been doing that for years, so if someone switched on the camera now and followed me around town centre, I'd be like, this is fun, this is great, I would enjoy it almost. Whereas, oh my god, if you're not used to that, you'll get cringed out, you won't be able to focus on what you're actually talking about, you'll find it hard to even be concise, because that's really important with football reporting, and I've done a lot of reporting as well, which I would say is not presenting. It absolutely is not. Yes, it's the same concept of presenting information in a concise manner, but the other skills required of observing a game, analysing a game, remembering names, remembering minutes, and some games I've reported on, there's no replays, there's no VAR, they're lower league games too. So you really just need to be on the ball, you need to keep watching what's happening, because the camera's going to turn on as soon as something happens, and if you can't articulate yourself properly, you have to. You don't really have a choice. You have to do that, because it's on like BT Sports Score or something like that. And it's quick, it's fast paced, and you cannot ramble. So
that's really interesting stuff, and it's really interesting, Eisha, because this is sort of my perspective. My opinion. I could be. Everyone's got their own opinion and perspective. That I think that. With social media, it's becoming more and more of an unforgiving public, in the sense that, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great people out there, but there is certainly an undercurrent of people who, if you get something wrong, they'll let you know about it, and they'll let you know about it in ways that probably, everyone's got entitled to their opinion, but sometimes there's a sort of line that, I think that, it's a shame people cross in terms of the way they comment and say stuff. But how does that impact, do you think, presenters and reporters now? I mean, you're sort of reporting in a lower league game, and you're out there, you've worked really hard, and you've travelled to get there, and it's not easy. I know obviously you enjoy it, and there's a lot of positives, but it's not easy in one sense. But are you sort of mindful of that if sort of I get something wrong, it's not just a question of it going out there, but equally there could be thousands of people who sort of latch onto that and let me know about it type thing?
Yeah, I never used to be like that, because actually I went to work in India for 7 years, and there I did. Yeah, I mean, I worked for ESPN, and I also worked for ESPNcricinfo, so obviously there's just a focus on cricket for that. But for there's a channel called Star Sports, and just for Star Sports, I was only contracted for football, and that required there was a 6-month football tournament, and it was match day, travel day, match day, travel day, match day, travel day, and it was all over India, and I did that tournament twice. So I guess doing that tournament and getting thrown in the deep end, and it was obviously on TV every day, I actually, because when I started that it was just TV, I sort of didn't think about it too much, because it was live, and because it was short, punchy segments here and there, like interview the coach, go to the press con, interview the players, and interview owners. I didn't think about it too much, but then towards the end of that, the second time I did it, a lot more of the footage and content was being promoted online as well. And that's when I was a bit more apprehensive. I was like, oh God, now I actually need to hear what people say about it. And there are many, many people who know what they're talking about. Don't get me wrong. Everyone's entitled to an opinion. But there are some people who will comment on stuff just because it's a girl talking about it. Obviously, that's a whole different conversation. Or they have some emotional attachment to their club for whatever reason. They don't want to hear what you're saying, and when it was just on TV, didn't think about it, didn't even worry. I was actually even more confident, because I was like, well, this is what I want to ask, so the viewer's going to have to deal with it. If my producer's unhappy, he'll tell me. But as for any other opinions, honestly, it's not going to be constructive criticism for me, because I'm working with the director and producers, and I already want to ask what I want to ask after a game. I want to get a certain reaction, I want to get a certain story out there. But yeah, it did sort of change when everything became a bit more it was just, everything was a bit more involved, like digitally, and their digital platforms were promoting a lot more of the content, and I thought, okay, I need to prepare and perhaps grow a thick skin, because people want to have an opinion about stuff, and that's fine, but there's a difference between that and trolling, and I see a lot of trolling online, a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point you've made there, and I think for me, it's one of them. I think people doing that just need to take a deep breath and think about what they're doing, because obviously, one thing is for sure, obviously there's rules and regulations anyway, so they can get themselves into trouble doing that. But on the other side of things, they need to think, okay, that could be their daughter, their son, someone close to them. And sometimes it's sort of the depersonalization on social media, where people have to realize that, it's a person. People have got feelings, and absolutely, people have an opinion, great, but there is a line, I think, for me, and certainly I'd like to see social media look at their regulations, but that's just sort of my opinion in that respect. But it is what it is. I suppose every job each has its inherited problems, and I suppose the future, with social media being a big thing and online doing a lot of stuff, that's going to be an issue. And in terms of yourself, I mean, the experience in India, what was that like? I mean, it's really fascinating. Obviously, cricket there's huge, and got a fantastic cricket team, and the 2020 has taken off there, and the national team's done well. But also football there's growing too, Eisha. What was your experience in India like?
It was really cool. I didn't expect to stay in India for as long as I did.
Yeah.
I initially went out there on a modelling contract, and I remember telling my agent that I really like sports, and I really think I would be a good presenter, just because I like talking, I like asking questions, and like I said, I'm comfortable in front of a camera, and I just thought that's enough to start with. So I just begged my agent to get my foot in the door at any channel, preferably sport. So she did what she could, and I started with travel, which is obviously great, because in India there are festivals and so much culture and food, and every single state is so different from itself. So I did that only for a short while, to be honest, a few months, and then I got the meeting at Star Sports, which is the biggest sports network there. And then it was all go from there. Then I just focused on that because my first project was the football tournament that I was talking about. And you're right, there's actually a big focus on growing football in India. And when I started 4 years ago, even from then until now, there's been such a huge progression. It's really, really grown. There's so much money and there's so much investment in growing football, just because cricket is number one, and it probably always will be. But there are many states that are they have really rich footballing histories, and because of that, the infrastructure is a little bit different. They just need a bit of investment because they're athletically able to go on and play professionally, and the passion is very much there as opposed to cricket. But they just needed a bit of investment in certain areas, and now that there's definitely a focus on that. There are a lot of homegrown players in this tournament, and there are star players coming in. It's good for the commercial value of it is great because they're able to get these marquee players, but the focus is growing Indian football and having homegrown youngsters. And even there's for the women's national team football, one of the girls from there, her name's Bala Devi, and she plays for Rangers. She's living in Scotland, and that is an example of how football is really growing, and in particular it's involving girls. My tournament was just boys, but the broad investment is for football in India, and she's doing really well in Scotland.
Yeah, that's interesting you say, and I have a sort of colleague of mine, a friend of mine, he sort of reports this commentary in India. I think he's been going out now every year or so for the last few years, Andy, and
Andy.
Andy Pascal, and sort of sometimes he puts the pictures on social media, and I used to Andy was, you could call him a mentor of mine, my mentor really, because he gave me an opportunity on a sports show. What was called the football show, and I used to do a segment, and we sort of go back. But anyway, long story short, I look at some of the pictures he puts out and think, wow, some of the crowds and the atmosphere. Obviously, at the moment, sort of COVID has impacted the world and so on and so forth. But from the point of view that I just look at some of the players out there, and it's really impressive. It looks like the game is growing. And do you think the game will continue growing, or is just cricket just going to be the number one sport? What are your thoughts on that? What's your perspective on that, Eisha?
Football will definitely keep growing, and like I said, since I started doing that tournament, there's been so much growth already. The tournament's extended, and there are just there's loads going on. There are foundations, there are great grassroots setups with the aim of getting those players at a level where they can play in the tournament, and there wasn't really that before. The financial investment wasn't really significant enough to take them anywhere, and I think it will keep growing. Like I said, I don't think football will ever be reach the same level of popularity as cricket in India, but I do think in those certain areas in particular where I said there's a really rich footballing history, I really think with that passion and with that history and the football culture in those certain areas, for sure, with money and with growth and this constant investment with the tournament, that will get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like Kolkata, for example, like the ties they have and the history they have with some teams, and even the northeast, like Guwahati. Even the national team, our captain Sunil Chetri, he's from the northeast, and there are just certain areas where they just needed that funding, they needed that focus to grow and really dominate, I guess, Indian football. And because those areas already had so much passion and culture, football culture, the followers, like you said, you've seen the followers, it's insane.
And I think, for me, I was sort of thinking, a while back, something I was sort of thinking that, you mentioned there, obviously, sort of women footballer coming across, and I suppose in one sense, let's say, a team in Europe or the UK guess it brings a player over, it could have a massive impact in terms of, I'm not saying to buy a player just on the basis they're going to, from a commercial point of view, but do you see in the future, Eisha, that as the Indian football grows, we've seen some great athletes from India, we've seen some of the cricket players who are, phenomenal. Let's say a footballer comes through the ranks and a European team sort of takes, him or her on board. How much of an impact do you think it could have in terms of, for Indian football in general, to maybe have like a hero playing in the Premier League, or whether it's the Women's Premier League or the Men's Premier League or in Europe somewhere?
That would be enormous. That player would be a really good role model, just because of also the money involved with that. I guess in any country, to be fair, but obviously given the economy and everything, if they're not part of the tournament that I was associated with, honestly, there's no money in playing football for a professional level. So if one of them was to head to Europe, that would be a huge milestone, and it would just inspire the others that are in grassroots. That, it would be enormous, because especially for the football followers and fans who weren't necessarily from these states where I said, they have a rich footballing history, they've only ever followed Man United. There's a lot of Man United fans. They're like, crazy about Sir Alex Ferguson, and that's what they follow for football, and that's the dream, European football, and they'll stay up at any hour to watch games and stuff. But it's a distant dream to get a player over there and actually take part. So that would be enormous. I'm sure it will happen at some point. I hope it does.
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, we're seeing it sort of in one sense. Say, for example, you've got there's been American footballers, for example, playing in the UK and Europe before, but now we're seeing a few more, and that kind of has a knock-on effect, really. Just one comes across, and then all of a sudden it inspires a generation. But in terms of yourself, Eisha, what's your vision going forward? It's quite an interesting sort of career path in terms of the way you got into the presenting, and you obviously have taken to it, and you're confident what you do. You seem very confident what you do. You're very capable. Obviously, got building experience. And what do you sort of see your vision in terms of? There's many strings to your bow, but where do you sort of see your vision from where you are? Is it something you're going to sort of carry on doing and just keep going as far as you can, or?
Yeah, I do work as a football coach as well, and I really enjoy it. But I don't think I would focus on coaching football full-time anytime soon. Probably somewhere down the line I'll aim to set up some football team or something like that, or something, charitable. But I will continue doing coaching on the side, and I'll keep focusing on presenting and reporting. And I tried my hand at commentary a couple of months ago for the first time.
Wow.
And live radio commentary, and it was so challenging, but I really enjoyed it, and I know I have loads more to learn. I just thought if I can nail commentary, it'll make my job as reporting a lot easier. I'll probably try that. And I do like creating my own content from home. Obviously at the moment that's all I can really do. So creating content from home. I've been interviewing some Newcastle players. I'm a Newcastle fan, and asking them everything I wanted to ask as I was growing up. So I thought, why not produce some content out of this? I did actually, when I was in India also, I tried shooting. I got some friends together. My friends, 2 of them are filmmakers, one of them is a drone operator, one of them is a photographer, and we went on a road trip over India for about 3-4 weeks.
Wow.
And we didn't really plan it at all, but the guys are from South India anyway, so they were kind of knowledgeable on the best places, like, mountains, or we went to many places, and we visited NGOs and charities that were run in South India, and I interviewed all the owners and the volunteers about how funding can help. And we did that about 6 or 7 charities over South India, and we documented the whole journey and the whole trip. And I'm still editing that, and I've done.
Wow.
I think I guess I've released 5 episodes, but there's still about 6 remaining, which I'm working on. Which, yeah, I mean, I've started to enjoy editing. I didn't think I would, but maybe because it's my own content and I understand the vision and the message I want to send out to encourage funding for these charities, so it makes it a bit easier. So yeah, I'd love to do more stuff like that. Actually, that's probably the only non-sport related thing I would want to do. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's a good time for females to work in sport, and
absolutely,
there's so many ladies that have just paved the way for me, and I have built up so much already. So I would love to just keep growing and take any opportunities that come my way and have a great time along while I'm doing it.
No, that's great stuff. And how have you found the coaching itself? I mean, are you enjoying doing coaching? Is that, I think that sort of, I guess it goes hand in hand in terms of your passion for sport and football. What's your sort of goal from a coaching point of view? You mentioned that obviously sort of, the presenting and the other stuff that you're doing too is sort of, I know that keeps you really busy, but from a coaching point of view, where do you sort of see that going?
Well, I got my coaching badges because I thought it would really help with my knowledge of football, and I'm always looking to grow that area because I do enjoy football, and there's just, oh my God, it's so intricate. When it comes to interviewing coaches, I sort of wanted to get in their head a bit more, and I thought, oh, this is fun, and when I was in India, actually, I got approached. There was a new league set up. It was called the Adidas Premier League, and it's a semi-professional league, and they approached me about owning a club. So I ended up co-owning a football club and a cricket team in that league, and I was like, wow, this is so random, but I am going to grab it with both hands because this is fun. I chose the designs of the kits, I sought sponsors, I recruited our coach, I dealt with disciplinary actions within the club. It was so fun, and when I was doing that, that's when I was like, wait, you need to get your coaching badges because you're really enjoying this. So that's what I did, and then since then I've been coaching children. I love children. I love working with children. So, it's just kind of gone hand in hand with wanting to grow my knowledge of football, and keeps me active, keeps me out there, running around on a football pitch. I have a lot of energy. So it just seems to work well. But yeah, like I said, probably won't focus on that full time. I will just do that alongside my presenting, and I already know it's improved my ability to ask questions to a coach.
Absolutely,
on a small scale. It has, because I know I'm coaching children at grassroots level, but there's a lot that I'm experiencing now where I'm like, oh God, we do competitive games at the weekend, and if someone came and asked me questions, I don't know, it just definitely helps. I know now what.
Absolutely,
I think, I'd ask better questions.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's quite helpful, and like you says, I think it's quite inspiring for the young people to sort of to have a presenter coaching too, because obviously they'll sort of see you presenting as well, and it's quite inspiring for them to have someone who presents and who's up close to sort of players that play professionally, coaching too. That's just a great thing, Eisha, for sure. So it's been really fascinating speaking to you, and certainly wish you all the best, and no doubt that you'll sort of go on to achieve whatever you set out to achieve, for sure. I suppose one thing's for sure. I mean, what about in terms of, say, we have a lot of listeners who across all different walks of life. No doubt some of them are probably thinking about presenting. And is there anything that you could suggest? I'm not suggesting give any advice, but any sort of tips you can give anyone sort of maybe starting their journey? I know it's not easy, but what are some things you'd say to someone who's sort of starting their journey and making their way into the world of presenting, Eisha? Any sort of thoughts or ideas?
Yeah, definitely. I actually I made a YouTube video on this, on how I started, and I really went into detail about I shared tips and everything. So if anyone wants to check that out, go check that out. But I will say now briefly that I think in this day and age, I think being comfortable in front of the camera and talking and being able to think quickly is really a starting point. If you can nail the early stages of that, you have other things to focus on if you actually get jobs. And for that, you need to create content. you need to go outside your local football club, get one of your mates, or use a tripod if you don't have any mates. Use a tripod, talk to the camera, any story, something simple. Grab a football fan if it's safe to do so. Ask them questions. You need to keep asking people questions with the camera rolling. You need to think on your feet, and you need to get used to just landing up somewhere with people around you and talking to a camera. Edit those videos, post those videos. You need to get used to putting yourself out there, because if all of that is covered, I didn't do any of that before I started presenting. I was very much like, no, I will only work for channels, and I'm not creating my own content. I was just aiming for that, and I worked hard, don't get me wrong, but I definitely got lucky in that sense, because I had a manager, and you're not going to be able to go out and get a manager tomorrow. If you have gift of the gab, you'll find a talent manager, and you'll sell yourself, but it's unlikely in this, especially in this climate. They're not going to take on someone with no experience. So you create your own portfolio. Even don't worry about views, don't worry about engagement on your content, but just make sure that you're creating, and do everything yourself. And if you do everything yourself, you'll get more comfortable with, if you're editing the videos you're shooting of yourself, you'll know next time when you're editing, you'll be like, oh God, why did I say that? No, I'm not even going to faff around with that. Next time I'll be more concise, I'll be more punchy, I'll be clearer. To do everything yourself, and just focus on yourself and keep growing in that way, because you need to sell yourself, but even if you sold yourself, you need to deliver. And if you oversell yourself to a manager or a channel or even a radio station, if you oversell, and when it gets down to it, and you get an opportunity and you're like, oh, I've never done this before, what am I doing? No one's going to guide you. And you know what? It's a small industry. You won't get blacklisted, but you need to make a good impression. So leading up to that moment, just hustle yourself and don't stop making content constantly. Your knowledge needs to be fresh. Your skills need to be fresh. Don't go stale. Don't sit there and go rusty and wait for opportunities to come to you. And make sure you're on LinkedIn messaging people constantly. When you have the portfolio, when you have something to show for yourself, don't aimlessly message people if you don't have anything to show. Make a good show reel. You can do that in the town centre, like I said, outside your football club. Whatever, go find the oldest football fan in the country. Interesting stuff that doesn't cost a lot to do. You can use your phone to film stuff, and just don't wait for opportunities to come to you, because it doesn't work like that. And don't go stale, and that's really important, because there might be someone who's a top presenter last year, but if you have a whole year of I'm trying to get work, blah blah blah, like even a professional will go a bit rusty.
Absolutely.
You can't let that happen.
No, absolutely. And I sort of sense that your experience of sort of travelling as well has sort of helped you a lot, and to see the world in different ways, and certainly you've worked hard, Eisha, to get to where you are, and credit to you, and you sound certainly like you've got the right work ethic and sort of philosophy as well to carry on and keep going. But it's been really great to sort of speak to you, Eisha. I'm sure the listeners have found that really interesting, and I want to thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. And that was Eisha Acton, who's a sports presenter and football coach, and obviously has a few different roles as well, who's given some very fascinating insight into some of her work, and I certainly found that really interesting, and no doubt the listeners have sort of found that quite intriguing, and presenting these days has changed notably because of social media, and more people are having a go at it. But there's some really interesting sort of insights from Eisha. So thanks again, Eisha Acton. The Friday Sports Show for your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you all the news from the local area and around the world, different perspectives on the Friday Sports Show, 94.5 FM Salford City Radio. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.